You never really know the strength you carry until the people you love push you to your knees. I learned that one summer evening, the kind where the air hums with heat and cicadas sing like they know something you don't. My name is Margaret Lane, though folks around town used to call me Maggie. I'm 64 now, with silver hair that refuses to stay in place and a heart that's been patched more times than I can count. But this isn't about my wrinkles or the arthritis in my hands. It's about the day my family, the people I raised, fed, and loved, decided I wasn't needed anymore. The day it happened started like any other. I woke before dawn, brewed my coffee in that old percolator that's been with me since 1983, and watched the sun rise over the maple trees in our front yard. My husband, Tom, used to say that mornings in Willow Creek had a magic to them. Like God himself dipped the sky in honey before painting it blue. But Tom's been gone 6 years now. Cancer took him slow, and silence took me fast. After he passed, I moved in with my son Michael and his wife Tracy, thinking we'd find comfort in each other. We didn't. At first it was fine. I helped with the grandkids, made dinners, did laundry. You know, the things mothers do even when their own bones ache. But as time went by, I noticed how Tracy's smiles grew tighter and how Michael stopped looking me in the eye. They said things like, "Mom, you don't have to cook every night. Mom, we can handle the kids ourselves. Mom, maybe you should find something to do." I didn't understand what something to do meant until the day I came home from the grocery store to find my things packed into boxes by the door. "Mom," Michael began, his voice shaking just enough to sound guilty. "Tracy and I talked. We think it's time you move out. The kids are growing up and we just need our space." I remember standing there with a carton of milk in one hand and disbelief in the other. "Move out?" I whispered. "But this is home." Tracy crossed her arms. "It's our home, Margaret. You've been here almost 3 years. You need to live your own life." My own life. Those words rang in my ears like a church bell on an empty Sunday. They gave me a week to find somewhere to go. A week to accept that the people I'd given my whole world to had decided I was too much, too old, too in the way. For the first few nights, I slept on the couch, surrounded by my boxes. Each morning, I'd wake to the sound of my grandchildren getting ready for school, their laughter muffled behind a wall that suddenly felt too thick. On the 5th day, I found a note taped to my door. "Mom, we'll be home late tonight. Please don't wait up." It wasn't signed. That was the night I cried for the first time in years. Not the kind of crying that brings relief, but the kind that feels like your heart's trying to leave your body through your throat. I thought of Tom and how he'd never have let this happen. I thought of Michael as a boy, the way he used to run to me when he scraped his knee, how he once promised he'd take care of me forever. Forever turned out to be a rented room above a diner on Maple Street. The day I left, the sky was gray, a sad, heavy gray, like the world was mourning something too. Michael helped me carry my boxes to the curb. He didn't say much. I didn't either. When he shut the trunk, I looked at him and said softly, "Take care of your family, son." He nodded but couldn't look me in the eye. And that was it. 32 years of motherhood packed into cardboard and silence. I rented a small room above Betty's diner where I used to waitress back in my 20s. Betty's long gone, but her niece June runs the place now. She's one of those women who's seen everything and still manages to smile. "Room's small," she said, handing me the key. But the coffee's free and you can help out if you want. I wanted. I needed. That first week, I worked the early shift, wiping tables, refilling sugar jars, pretending the ache in my chest was just heartburn. Most of the customers were regulars, truckers, old couples, and a few teenagers who thought pancakes were a midnight meal. One morning, a man in a tan jacket came in, quiet, polite, always ordered black coffee and a slice of cherry pie. After a few visits, he smiled at me and said, "You've got kind eyes, ma'am." I hadn't heard a compliment in years. His name was Frank Holloway, a retired carpenter who'd lost his wife 2 winters ago. We started talking. Nothing deep, just weather and pie and old country songs. But after so many months of being invisible, even small talk felt like sunlight on cold skin. One rainy afternoon, I was closing up the diner when June found me staring out the window. "You okay, Maggie?" she asked. I shrugged. "Guess I'm just wondering what comes next." She smiled. "Honey, you're not done yet. Some of the best chapters start when the old ones burn down." I didn't know it then, but she was right. That night, I took a long walk down by Willow Creek. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled like wet earth and lilacs. I thought about how everything I'd built, the house, the family, the love, was gone. But I was still here, breathing, standing, and something deep inside me whispered, "Start over." So I did. I took every bit of pain, every ounce of heartbreak, and turned it into something new. I didn't know how or what yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let being unwanted define me. That's when the real story began, the one where I built a life not out of duty or expectation, but out of choice. It's strange how quickly a new life begins to take shape, not in grand moments, but in quiet ones. The hum of a coffee pot, the clink of dishes in the sink, a stranger saying good morning and meaning it. That little room above Betty's diner became my whole world. It wasn't much window, Waddy Connor, a leaky faucet and walls thin enough to hear the jukebox downstairs. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I didn't have to tiptoe around anyone else's comfort. I could just exist. Every morning I woke up to the smell of bacon and brewed coffee rising through the floorboards. I'd tie on my apron, head downstairs, and help June open up the diner before the sun fully woke. The bell above the door would ring and the day would begin. Slow, simple, predictable. I found comfort in that rhythm. It healed me in ways I didn't understand yet. Frank, the man in the tan jacket, became a regular fixture in my mornings. He always sat at the same booth, by the window where the light hit just right. Sometimes he brought a newspaper. Sometimes he just watched the world go by. We talked, a lot more now, about little things mostly. His old carpentry jobs, my garden back at the house I'd lost, the weather, the county fair, the best pie flavor. He swore by apple. I said nothing beats cherry. It wasn't romance, not then. It was something quieter, a reminder that not everyone saw me as a burden. One morning, he left a small wooden bird on the counter, hand-carved, smooth as glass. "I made it," he said shyly. "Thought it might look nice on your windowsill." I turned it over in my hands. It was beautiful, detailed, careful, the kind of work done by someone who still believes in gentleness. "Thank you," I whispered. And for the first time in months, I meant it without feeling small. A few weeks later, June told me the diner's back room was being turned into a craft space for locals. "Town council's funding a community program," she said. "We'll host classes, painting, quilting, woodworking, stuff like that." She looked at me with that spark in her eye. "You used to paint, didn't you, Maggie?" I blinked. "Oh, that was a long time ago." "Well," she said, sliding a flyer across the counter, "maybe it's time to dust off those brushes." That night, I sat by the window in my tiny room, the wooden bird keeping me company. Could I really start again? Did I even remember how to create anything that wasn't for someone else? I rummaged through my boxes until I found an old paintbrush, the same one I'd used years ago to paint a mural in Michael's nursery. I held it like it was an old friend. Maybe it was. The next morning, I walked into the back room and signed up for the beginner's art workshop. There were 6 of us, all women, all from different corners of Willow Creek. Some widowed, some retired, one divorced twice and proud of it. We sat in a circle, painting still lifes and laughing over mistakes. I hadn't laughed like that in years. And when I looked at the brushstrokes on my canvas, something inside me stirred, a piece of the woman I used to be before I was just mom or burden or guest. Over the weeks, the diner's back room turned into a second home. We'd gather every Thursday night with our paints and stories. June called it the gathering table. We started with art, but it became something more, a place where lonely hearts found each other again. Betty's Diner, once just a roadside stop, had become the heart of our little town. And somehow, I had become part of its rhythm. One evening after class, I walked home under a sky painted orange and pink. Frank was waiting outside the diner, his hands in his jacket pockets. "Evening, Miss Maggie," he said, smiling that soft smile of his. "You walkin' home alone again?" "Always do," I said. "It's just across the street." "Still," he said, "a gentleman walks a lady home." I laughed, really laughed, and let him. We talked about nothing and everything. His late wife, my Tom, how both of them loved lilacs. By the time we reached the diner steps, the streetlights were humming, and something warm had settled in my chest. "Good night, Frank," I said. "Good night, Maggie," he answered, and I swear the world felt a little less empty. But rebuilding your life isn't a straight road. It's a winding one, full of potholes, memories, and the kind of nights that still make you cry quietly into your pillow. There were days I'd catch myself wondering how Michael was doing, how the kids were growing. I'd see families in the diner, mothers laughing with their sons, and my heart would twist. Sometimes I'd write letters I never sent. "Dear Michael," one began, "I hope you're doing well. The leaves are turning gold now, like the ones we used to rake together when you were little." But I never mailed them, because I knew he wasn't waiting for them, and that realization, that the people you love can move on without you, is its own kind of death. Still, I kept going. I painted, I worked, I laughed when I could and cried when I needed, and slowly, piece by piece, life began to bloom again. One morning, June burst into the kitchen waving a newspaper. "Maggie," she said, "they're featuring us in the Willow Creek Gazette. They're writing about how the diner's bringing art and community back to town." I blinked. "Us?" "Yeah, you too," she said. "They want to interview the women from the gathering table, especially you. Your paintings have people talking. They say you capture hope." Hope. The word felt foreign on my tongue. But when the local reporter came by, notebook in hand, I told her my story. Not all of it. Just enough. I told her about finding beauty in small places, about how life doesn't end just because someone else walks out of it. When the article came out, my name was there. Margaret Lane, the painter of second chances. People started coming to the diner just to see my art on the walls. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just someone's mother or wife. I was me. Frank showed up that same week with a grin and a bouquet of wildflowers. "They say you're famous now," he teased. I rolled my eyes. "Hardly. I just got lucky." He shook his head. "No, Maggie, you got brave." He invited me to the county fair that weekend, said he'd built a birdhouse, to enter in the woodcraft competition. I said yes. At the fair, we laughed like kids again. He won second place for his birdhouse. I won first for a painting of the diner at sunrise. Standing there, ribbon in hand, I looked out at the crowd, the people cheering, the children running, the sunlight glinting off the rides, and I realized something profound. This was my family now, not by blood, but by choice. And sometimes, that's the better kind. That night, I placed my blue ribbon next to the wooden bird on my windowsill. The little room above the diner didn't feel small anymore. It felt like home. I whispered to the empty room, "Tom, I think I'm gonna be okay." And for the first time since losing everything, I actually believed it. But life has a funny way of testing your peace. Just when you start to bloom, something comes along to see if your roots are strong enough to hold. I didn't know it yet, but soon my past, the family that cast me out, was about to find me again. And when they did, everything I'd built, everything I'd become, would be put to the test. They say peace is fragile, like glass. You think it's solid until something cracks it. For me, that crack came one Wednesday morning in late autumn. The diner smelled like cinnamon and maple syrup, and I was wiping down the counter when June called out, "Maggie, there's a young woman asking for you out front." I frowned. "For me?" When I stepped into the dining room, I froze. Standing by the door, clutching her purse like it might float away, was Lily, my granddaughter. She was 17 now, taller, older, but her eyes, they were still Michael's eyes. "Grandma," she whispered. The sound of that word, Grandma, after all those years, nearly broke me. I walked toward her slowly, afraid she might disappear if I blinked. "Lily, my goodness, you've grown so much." She bit her lip. "Mom and Dad don't know I'm here." Of course they didn't. She looked around, nervously eyeing the customers. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I led her to the booth by the window, the same one Frank always sat in. The morning light fell across her face, and I could see the hint of tears in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked gently. Her voice shook. "Dad lost his job. Things have been bad at home. They're arguing a lot about money, about you. Mom says what happened with you was a necessary decision. Dad doesn't say much, but I heard him crying last night." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm so sorry to hear that, honey." She looked at me. Really looked. "Why didn't you ever come back? Or call us?" I took a long breath. Because sometimes people have to find their way back to love on their own. And sometimes love means stepping away. She frowned, confused, but I could see she wanted to understand. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I never stopped loving you, Lily. Not for a single day." We talked for nearly an hour. She told me about school, about how she missed my Sunday pancakes, how she still had the quilt I made her when she was 5. Then she pulled something from her bag. An old photograph. It was me and Tom standing in front of the old house, Michael in my arms, just a baby. "I found this in a box," she said softly. "Dad keeps it in his desk." I stared at that photo until the edges blurred with tears. Tom was smiling, young and strong, and I remembered the promise I made him once, to always keep the family together, no matter what. Maybe I'd failed that promise, or maybe life just didn't let me keep it. Before she left, Lily said, "Grandma, could I come visit again? I don't really have anyone to talk to." I smiled through my tears. "You can come any time, sweetheart, any time at all." That night, as I sat in my little room above the diner, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she said "Grandma," the way she looked lost, like I used to. Part of me wanted to run to Michael's house that instant, to hug him, to tell him I forgave him, that I'd been waiting all this time. But another part of me, the wiser, older part, knew it wasn't time yet. You can't heal what hasn't been faced. So I waited. Over the next few weeks, Lily visited often, sometimes after school, sometimes on weekends. She helped at the diner, learned how to make pies with June, and even joined one of our painting nights. She had a natural talent. Her brushstrokes were bold, full of feeling. "You've got an artist's soul," I told her once. She smiled. "Guess it runs in the family." It was the first time anyone had said family to me in years without it hurting. But, of course, secrets don't stay hidden in small towns. One Friday afternoon, just as the lunch rush was dying down, the diner door swung open, and there stood Michael. His face was older, worn, his eyes red-rimmed. The room went still. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he whispered, "Mom." The sound hit me like a wave. He walked closer, stopping just short of the counter. "Lily told me she's been seeing you. I should have come sooner. He trailed off, looking down. "I didn't know how." I swallowed hard. "You don't owe me an apology, Michael." He looked up sharply. "Yes, I do." And then, right there in front of a dozen silent diners, my son began to cry. "I was wrong, Mom," he said between breaths. "Tracy convinced me it was the right thing. That you needed to move on. That we needed space. But it wasn't space. It was selfishness. You gave us everything and I threw you away." I stepped around the counter and put my hand on his arm. "Michael," I said softly, "you were trying to protect your family. I understand." He shook his head. "I didn't protect anyone. I just hurt the one person who never stopped loving me." The room blurred. I could feel the tears coming, but I held them back. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't need words. Sometimes it just needs a touch, a look, a quiet moment between two broken hearts trying to mend. I whispered, "You're my son. That's all that matters." He hugged me, the kind of hug that years can't erase, and for the first time since that awful day, I felt the weight start to lift. Later that evening, after the diner closed, we sat in the corner booth. He told me about losing his job, about how Tracy's bitterness had driven them apart, about how he'd been too ashamed to reach out. "I thought you'd hate me," he said. I shook my head. "Hate doesn't survive in a heart that's loved that much." He smiled weakly. "Dad would have been proud of you, Mom." That one broke me. I turned toward the window so he wouldn't see me cry. We talked for hours, about the past, about Lily, about how life can still surprise you, even when you think it's done with you. Before he left, he said, "I'd like to come back. Maybe for dinner sometime." I smiled. There's always a seat for you here. The next few weeks felt like spring after a long winter. Michael came by often, sometimes bringing Lily. He'd help fix things around the diner, talk with Frank, even joined us for the gathering table one night. It was strange and beautiful, seeing him there, laughing again, but I could see the guilt still lived in his eyes. One night, as we cleaned up the brushes, he said quietly, "You really built a life here, Mom. A whole new one." I nodded. Yes, I had to. He sighed, and we weren't in it. I reached for his hand. Maybe not then, but maybe now you can be. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail from Tracy. It was short, cold, but honest. Margaret, I know things between us were difficult. I've made mistakes. Michael told me about your art, your work at the diner. You've done well for yourself. I wish you peace. Tracy. I stared at the page for a long time. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. But it was something... closure, maybe. And sometimes closure is enough. The following month, Willow Creek held its first community art fair. The whole town came, kids, families, seniors. June had me paint the diner's banner. Frank built the display stands. Lily helped organize the entries. My booth was near the entrance, filled with paintings of the town, the creek at sunrise, the diner in winter, and one I'd finished just that week. A woman standing under a maple tree, her arms outstretched to the sky. I titled it, Starting Over. When the fair opened, people stopped to look. Some asked to buy prints. Others just smiled and said it made them feel peaceful. And then I saw them, Michael and Lily standing together watching me. Michael had that same look he had as a little boy when I'd tuck him in. A mix of pride and awe. He walked over and said, "You did it, Mom. You built your dream life." I smiled, tears welling up. "Yes," I said, "and it's still growing." Later that night, after the fair ended, Frank walked me home. The air smelled like autumn and caramel apples. "You know," he said, "you've changed a lot since that first day I met you." I chuckled. "I hope so." He stopped, looked at me, and said softly, "No, you've come alive again." I looked up at the stars, the same ones that had watched me cry in the dark years ago. "Maybe," I said, "sometimes we have to lose everything to find out who we really are." He nodded. "And sometimes the people who left come back to find us shining." That night, I sat by my window, the wooden bird still perched there beside my ribbon. The diner lights below flickered out one by one, and I thought about all the people who'd walked through my life. Those who stayed, those who left, and those who found their way back. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't lonely. I was whole. When I think about my family now, I don't see the pain anymore. I see the lessons. I see the woman I became because of it all. My family kicked me out once, and maybe that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to build something better. A life made of kindness, courage, and self-worth. And that, I realized, was my real inheritance all along. But there's still one more chapter, one that would test everything I'd built and prove once and for all that love in its truest form never leaves us. If you'd told me years ago, the day I left my son's house with boxes and a broken heart, that I'd end up here, I'd have laughed through tears. Life has a funny way of circling back. It breaks you, reshapes you, and then hands you pieces of peace when you least expect it. 3 years passed since the day I first moved into that tiny room above Betty's diner. And somewhere along the way, that little room became a chapter, not a whole book. The diner had grown busier than ever. June expanded the back room into a full-fledged community center, complete with weekly art nights, open mic Fridays, and coffee with the town elders every Sunday morning. People said I'd brought new life into Willow Creek, that my story inspired others to start again. I didn't see myself that way. I just saw a woman who refused to stay broken. Still, when folks came up to me with kind eyes and said, "Maggie, you make me believe it's never too late," something deep in my heart swelled with quiet pride. One chilly January morning, June came bustling in, cheeks red from the cold. She tossed a stack of envelopes on the counter. "Guess what, Maggie? The mayor's office wants to commission you to paint a mural for town hall." I blinked. "Me?" She grinned. "Yes, you. They said nobody captures Willow Creek's soul like you do." I laughed, the kind of laugh that starts small but fills a room. "Guess I'll need a bigger brush." The mural project became my new purpose. Every morning before dawn, I'd walk down Main Street, sketchbook in hand, watching the way the sunrise kissed the rooftops. I wanted the mural to tell the town's story, our story of hope, loss, and second chances. Frank offered to help, of course. He built the scaffolding himself, muttering about these city folks not knowing how to hold a hammer right. He'd bring me coffee while I painted, and sometimes we'd sit in silence, watching the world move below us. Shopkeepers sweeping their steps, kids racing bicycles, the church bell tolling. It felt peaceful. Like maybe, after all the storms, I'd finally found the calm. One afternoon, as I painted the last section, a small house under a maple tree, Michael walked up behind me. "Mom," he said softly, "that looks just like the house we grew up in." I smiled without turning. "Maybe it is." He stood there for a while, hands in his pockets. "You really built something here, a whole new life." I dipped my brush, choosing my next color carefully. "I had to," I said. "You can't live forever in someone else's story." He was quiet, then said, "I want to thank you for forgiving me when I didn't deserve it." I turned to him, eyes soft. "You were never unforgivable, Michael. Just human." He swallowed hard. "Lily's applying to art school, you know. Says she got her love of painting from her grandma." That made me laugh. A gentle, tearful laugh. "Well," I said, "then maybe something good runs in our family after all." The day the mural was unveiled, the whole town came out. The mayor gave a speech, photographers took pictures, and the Gazette ran a headline that read, "Local artist paints Willow Creek back to life." The mural stretched across the town hall wall, golden fields, the diner, the creek, children playing, and right in the center, a woman standing under a maple tree, her hands open to the sky. Some folks asked who she was. I just smiled. Someone who learned to start again. That evening, after the crowd left, I walked home through the square. The sun was setting, the air crisp and sweet. Frank met me halfway, his old truck parked by the diner. He held out a small box, his eyes twinkling. "For you." Inside was a silver pendant, a tiny bird, wings outstretched. "Frank," I whispered, touched. He shrugged, shy. "You taught me something, Maggie. You taught me it's never too late to fly." I looked at him, and in that moment, I saw what Tom would have wanted for me. Not to stay buried in grief, but to live. To love again. I took Frank's hand. "Let's see where these wings take us then." Months passed, soft and golden. Spring returned to Willow Creek, and with it a peace that settled deep into my bones. Michael and Lily visited often, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just stories. Tracy never came, but she sent a Christmas card that year. That was enough. Frank and I started hosting little paint and pie nights at the diner. I'd teach folks how to blend colors, he'd tell jokes and serve dessert. We laughed more than we worked. And one evening, as laughter echoed through the diner and the walls glowed with lamplight, I realized something I never thought I'd feel again. I was happy. Not the fleeting kind that comes from things or praise, but the quiet kind. The kind that fills you from the inside and says, "You made it." One night, after everyone left, I sat alone at my favorite booth, the one by the window. The wooden bird still sat on my windowsill upstairs, but tonight I brought it down to the diner. I placed it beside my coffee cup and whispered, "Tom, you'd laugh if you saw me now. Still stubborn, still spilling paint everywhere." I smiled to myself. "But you'd be proud too, wouldn't you?" I could almost feel him there, not haunting, not gone, just nearby, like love that never really leaves. As the clock ticked past midnight, I stepped outside. The street was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the lampposts. I looked up at the stars, the same ones that had watched me cry on the curb the day my son told me to leave. I thought of that woman, lost, unwanted, carrying boxes of her life in her arms, and I wanted to tell her, "Hold on, it's going to get beautiful," because it did. I didn't become rich or famous. I didn't get everything I ever wanted, but I got what mattered: peace, love, purpose, and a second chance. My dream life wasn't a mansion or money. It was this: a warm cup of coffee, a hand to hold, laughter echoing through a small-town diner, and the knowledge that I'd built it all myself, from the ground up, with grace. Sometimes people still ask me, "Maggie, how did you do it? How did you move on after losing everything?" I tell them the truth. You don't move on, you move through. You let the pain shape you, not shatter you. You plant new seeds in the ashes, and one day you wake up surrounded by flowers. That's the miracle of starting over. It doesn't erase what hurt you, it redeems it. The other night, Lily stood in front of my mural, eyes shining. "You know, Grandma," she said, "I think you built something even bigger than a dream life." I smiled. "Oh, what's that?" She grinned. "A legacy. When my family kicked me out, I thought it was the end, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of my life, the one where I learned to stand alone, to love again, and to find joy in simply being me. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your world's been taken apart, remember this: sometimes life has to fall apart so you can build something better from the pieces.